The engine in this 69 Firebird is a 1973 block. It's a Pontiac 400, and it was built by Wayne Shikantic in Wisconsin. And he's a guy who really knows his way around a Pontiac engine. Overall, it's a good street performing motor. It's a 9-to-1 compression engine. It's got everything new inside. It's running Pontiac number 16 cast iron heads and a Ram Air 4 cam, which is about a 230, 240 degree duration at 50. Kind of a mild high lift cam. It's a Pontiac design, and it's designed to be very lopey and kind of a higher RPM cam. We used a Professional Products crosswind air gap style intake manifold to try and help it breathe. And on the exhaust side, we used some reproduction cast iron long branch exhaust manifolds. And these are basically cast iron headers. So everything on the top end is designed to breathe, and the bottom end is built to last. We did some detail work on the engine. We painted it with the DuPont Hot Hues gunmetal dark charcoal color, and then we powder coated the intake and the cast aluminum valve covers with some Eastwood powder coating stuff to kind of reflect the color choice of the car. Our strategy was to build the engine and everything it needed to run without assembling the whole front of the car, so we didn't have to lean over fenders and things like that. So we put the block in place and started adding the parts that it needed to run around it. Once the engine was in place, we put the core support in, we attached the radiator. We got a really nice aluminum radiator that's built to fit these cars from Classic Industries, and it came with a pair of electric fans already installed, so it's kind of a nice time saver, and it's going to help keep this largely cast iron motor cool. We coated those exhaust manifolds with some Eastwood high temp spray. It's an easy process. We actually gave them a light bead blasting first, and you just spray the stuff on, let it kind of set up between coats a few minutes, and add 3 or 4 coats. And these cure once they're on the car. The engine heat from running the engine will cure them from the inside out. We wanted these to stay looking nice as long as possible. After the cast iron manifolds, we elected to run another MagnaFlow stainless exhaust system from front to back on this car. We're real impressed with those. Those kits always fit really well. This one was interesting because it had a transverse muffler. And when these cars were new, they came with transverse mufflers, which is a single muffler in the back. And a lot of people run duals on these cars, but the MagnaFlow single transverse fit very nicely up near the rear end and allowed for nice ground clearance front to back. The only thing we had to do was make the transition pipe between the exhaust manifold and the X pipe on the MagnaFlow kit. But they sell a pipe that I call a problem solver. It's a 2.5-inch diameter mandrel bent pipe that has a 180-degree U-bend on one side, and it goes straight, and then it has a 45-degree bend on the other side. And using one of those pipes, you can cut and weld and fit together basically anything you could want to connect any kind of a header or manifold to the rest of their system. And the one side has a flare on it, so basically you start by attaching the flared end to your manifold and then just cut the pieces to fit and connect the dots. It's really slick. One thing that took a bunch of time was to make sure that all the pulleys on the accessory drive system lined up. We used original GM stuff, and we got a few new pieces from Classic Industries, like a couple new pulleys and one of the brackets. But it's important to make sure that those belts run true, and it's not always as easy as just bolting the stuff together. I mean, anybody that builds a Pontiac motor knows it takes some time to get those to line up, but we were lucky. We got everything to fit pretty well. Another thing we added was the AC compressor from Vintage Air. Vintage Air makes a beautiful bracket for the Pontiac motors that puts one of their new style AC compressors on the passenger side. And it was almost too nice a piece to paint, but I think we powder coated it black and got that all fitted up. And then we took some time to carefully route the heater lines. And in fact, on the back of the Pontiac engine, there's a hose that becomes the upper heater core hose, and things just started to kind of get in the way. So we actually made that hose out of a hard copper 1/2-inch tube and then applied some basic heat shrink and Tech Flex wrap over it. So it was now a rigid hose with soft rubber ends, but that allowed it to go where we needed it to go. And once we had all of the accessories in place, we bolted on a Holley 750 double pumper carburetor and kind of rigged up an electric fuel pump right to the battery because our fuel system wasn't, completely installed yet. And we knew we were going to run this car with an EFI system later, but I wanted to do the engine break-in on a carburetor because it eliminates some variables. And this also being a flat tappet cam, it was crucial that once it started, we kept the RPMs up around 2,500, 3,000 RPM to break it in, because if you let that RPM fall, you can flatten a brand new camshaft, and of course that's bad. So like we do with all of our engines, the break-in was a process using some Royal Purple break-in oil, which is a non-synthetic oil. It's actually a mineral-based oil that has a lot of additives, ZDDP and other additives to make sure that the camshaft and the lifters get proper lubrication, because those lifters need to start spinning right away on the cam, and if the oil's too slippery, they won't. So the Royal Purple break-in lube, we used Royal Purple synthetic steering fluid. Everything else got topped off with Royal Purple lubricants before we turned the key for the first time. Behind the 400 is going to be a Muncie M21 4-speed transmission. It's got a Hurst linkage on it. So we put a new flywheel, clutch disc, pressure plate, fork, throw-out bearing, all the pieces of the clutch were all brand new. We made sure we had all that stuff lubricated. Again, we used a Royal Purple synthetic grease for that on the pivot ball and on the throw-out bearing and all that jazz, because we didn't want that stuff to hang up. And then we hoisted up the freshly rebuilt M21 transmission into place. There's some little detail items like all the linkage bushings and hairpin clips. All that stuff's available from Classic Industries. So when it was finally time to turn the key and start this beast, we did a little pre-prep by removing the MSD Pro Billet distributor and using a distributor body with a shaft in it to prime the oil pump to make sure that we had good oil pressure and proper lubrication through the whole system. We pulled that out and put the distributor back in, set the timing. I think we set this to about 12 degrees initial, and double checked all of our wiring, and we had one guy, TJ, behind the wheel, because this car being a 4-speed, it's got a safety switch on the clutch, so you have to step on the clutch and turn the key, so we had him there. And then Nathan was helping, monitoring the timing gun, and I think everybody had a fire extinguisher handy, and we put some fans around the car and turned on our little electric fuel pump and turned the key. And it was great. It was a nice startup. The car came to life real quickly. The engine ran really nice and smooth, even with the Lopi cam. We had it revved up to 2,500, 3,000 RPM or so for the first half an hour of operation. The timing was dead on. It made great vacuum, so the power brakes are going to work real nice. And we let it idle down, and that Ram Air 4 cam does have a lumpy idle, but coming out of that MagnaFlow dual exhaust system, it sounded really, really sweet. And with the Holley carburetor on it, it had a nice throttle response, and it didn't seem to want to get hot. So overall, I think the engine install was a home run.